Part 2 of the French Revolution. In this section, we will cover the outbreak of the revolution, the events leading to the revolution, how France became a constitutional monarchy, and finally, reading political symbols. The outbreak of the revolution. In the late 18th century, France was facing serious financial issues. King Louis XVI wanted to increase taxes. But under the old regime, he could not do this by himself. Only the Estates General, a special meeting of representatives, could approve taxes. This meeting had not been called for over 100 years. When it finally met, the clergy and the nobles each sent 300 representatives. The common people, called the Third Estate, had 600 representatives. Most of them were educated and rich men. Poor peasants, workers, and were not allowed, but they sent their complaints in thousands of letters. Earlier, each estate had just one vote. This meant the clergy and the nobles could always join together and defeat the Third Estate. But this time, the Third Estate asked that every representative should have one vote. This idea came from the thinker Rousseau, who wrote about equality in his book The Social Contract. The king refused this demand. So, the Third Estate walked out in protest. They declared themselves the National Assembly, saying they were the real voice of the people of France. The revolution began to gather speed. At Versailles, the representatives of the Third Estate met in an indoor tennis court. There they took the famous tennis court oath, promising not to leave until they had created a new constitution. Leaders like Mirabeau and Abbé Sieyès guided this movement. Meanwhile, the economic crisis was getting worse. A very cold winter ruined the harvest, and the price of bread rose sharply. Bakers hid supplies to increase profits, and hungry crowds, especially women, attacked shops in anger. At the same time, the king sent troops into Paris, which only increased people's fear and anger. Soon after, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison that symbolized the king's cruelty. The fall of the Bastille became the defining moment of the revolution. The unrest then spread to the countryside. Rumors said that nobles had hired armed men to destroy crops. Scared and angry peasants attacked manor houses, looted grain, and burned documents that showed the taxes and dues they owed. Many nobles fled to other countries. With power collapsing across France, King Louis XVI finally had no choice but to accept the National Assembly. The National Assembly finally completed the Constitution in 1791. Its main goal was to reduce the power of the king and to make sure power was shared. Instead of one person holding all authority, power was divided into three parts: the legislature to make laws, the executive to carry out laws, and the judiciary to interpret laws. The power to make laws was given to the National Assembly. But the system of voting was indirect. Citizens voted for a group of electors, and then the electors chose the members of the assembly. Not everyone had the right to vote. Only men above the age of 25, who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a worker's wages, were called active citizens and allowed to vote. The rest, including all women, were known as passive citizens and had no voting rights. To be elected as a deputy, a man had to belong to the highest group of taxpayers. The Constitution began with the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. This declared rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, and equality before the law. These rights were considered natural and could not be taken away. It was the duty of the state to protect them. At that time, most men and women in France could not read or write. So instead of words, images and symbols were used to explain important ideas. These symbols helped people understand the message of freedom and equality. For example, broken chains stood for the act of becoming free, just like freeing one from slavery. The bundle of rods, tied together, showed the strength of unity, because one rod can be broken easily, but many rods together cannot. The eye inside a triangle was a symbol of royal power and vigilance. The scepter represented authority. The snake biting its own tail formed a circle, eternity, something that has no beginning and no end. Other symbols also became popular. The red Phrygian cap, once worn by freed slaves, became the sign of liberty. The blue, white, and red colors came to represent the nation of France. The winged woman was shown as the personification of law and justice. And the law tablet reminded people that the law was the same for everyone, and that all citizens were equal before it. Through these simple but powerful images, the ideas of the revolution reached even those who could not read. Let us quickly recap the key points. France was facing a deep financial crisis, so Louis XVI called a meeting of the Estates General. In this assembly, the Third Estate demanded fair voting rights. When their demand was rejected, they declared themselves the National Assembly and swore the famous tennis court oath, promising not to separate until a new constitution was written. Anger grew as bread prices rose, hunger spread, and crowds in Paris stormed the Bastille prison, a symbol of royal power. In the countryside, peasants attacked nobles' houses, looted grain, and destroyed the records. Finally, in 1701, a new constitution limited the king's powers, gave lawmaking power to the National Assembly, and began with the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, which declared freedom and equality as natural rights. Since most people could not read, symbols were used for the revolution to show that all are equal before the law.
Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please do like, share with friends, and please subscribe to the channel.